Hey everybody, this is DayTraderRockStar, and today's video is kind of a little market radar going into next week, but also talking about a channel formation I like to trade. It's just a downward channel. We call it the 1-2-3 channel. We buy into weakness, and normally, depending on what stock it is and stuff, and the bigger trend. But normally, I like to buy into these pullback plays. Pullbacks where we take most of the risk out of it, and then we get those bounce plays. And combine this specific setup with other indicators that we use on the high probability methodology, and that is, trading channels within channels. Within any bigger time frame, there'll be smaller time frames and smaller channels, and it's very easy to just kind of wait for everything to line up. You actually have an underlying trend line here. If I could draw that in, this is just a capture of this picture, so I can't draw on it yet. But if you drew this trend line right down here, you would see this lined up, and there was probably it goes back here to another pivot area back there, and that really ends up being an X marks the spot. And then we pushed back up, and we started pulling back down to a tight channel, and once again we had this extension of the trend line, the lower trend line, and that was really your absolute area, your what we call the high probability zone. So when you have two of those indicators, three or more indicators lining up, and you get that, and you also had that Coil Stochastic. So, we traded this one good, and it's actually still in play. As you see, I expect a little move further up here, but that's how important this patterns coming out, because the big moves happen off of these patterns, and I'm seeing a lot of those patterns play out actually last week and this week. So we're just going to review a couple of those to get you familiar with it and what to help you look for when you're looking for a trade position. A lot of these setups that you're seeing come from a watch list that I put out for members of Day Trading Radio. So we put the buy zones in, the profit zones in, really depending on what the setup is. And each one of these setups are what we call a playbook play, and those are all defined on the forums. So just check the forums, and you'll actually see each one of these in an educational video describing how to trade them. But this, again, is that 1-2-3 pattern. You actually have one pivot, two pivots on top. You draw that parallel, you draw that line, and then you draw a parallel line. And lots of times you're going to start off that line at that first pivot after the breakdown. But it usually should show you, you just take that lowest pivot in there, and as the price comes down into that level, then you have your trade is all set up here, and that's exactly where you want to be taking that higher probability zone into that weakness, but a bigger pattern and you're buying into that weakness, but overall a good stock, and a stock that's very important. It can't be just any fly-by-night stock. It has to be a quality name that has the the reputation of being the buy on a dip, and to understand that this is a great stock, and any type of technical setup like this is going to give us a better entry. So as you can see, this went out last week off that level, and then we exploded out of this the day after we got into, and it was helped by a little news. But the fact is, these are great levels to get into, and it doesn't matter. That's, to be stuck in this chop here, it's about waiting for everything to kind of line up. This also had a lane divergence that we're tracking, which gave us confirmation. So these are different indicators that we use, and we have to line them all up. But once they line up, these are trades you have to take, and this is the discipline you have to have behind you. Here's a classic, as I identified on the video, classic 1-2-3 video, a classic 1-2-3 channel, and then we extended that lower trend line down here. And this, I wasn't worried about the bearish flags, which is great to identify, a little retracement, breakdown, but just like we had a breakdown and a push back up, there's a great reason why we expect to push back up here, because look at this beautiful channel down here, and this was again just a perfect setup. We didn't have to wait long for it at all. You just click on that arrow there and see what happened, and you can see a nice push, and it actually took a couple of days. We got into our profit zone, and we sold it, and it's still it's still a stock we want to track. If it pulls back down here, probably do something very similar to it, but I don't think that's going to happen. I actually think we're going to probably push a little bit higher, because these are the the specialty areas that we love to get in. We usually get some good trades, even though we might take them off in the first stage. You'll look back on these trades and you'll find that these levels are usually the best levels you can find on the chart. So this is, again, another example of that 1-2-3 channel, and a lot of stocks here have been pulling back into that lower support line, and that's what we're buying into. What I always say on the radio is you'll never pick the bottom unless you're buying the fear, and you're never going to pick the top or sell the top unless you're selling the strength. So you have to go against the tide there. You have to be, while, you know, bullets are flying at you, you have to be up there, you know, buying. You have to be buying. That's the only chance of really getting anywhere close to you know, a good position. Because most people are going to be chasers in this market. And you could definitely profit that way. But we want to be able to get our best risk reward trade, and this is the best method to do it. And the last setup for this past week, or the last couple weeks, was this which one? DHR. And again, it's just the typical pattern that we're looking for. The pivot on the bottom, 2 pivots on top. We wait for the price to get down there, and we actually, you know, gave it enough room, so, you know, we got in it early enough, knowing that we're in our buy zone right now. We can't let these things sneak away on us. Plus, we're on a 200. But as you can see, we kind of just chopped around and then took off to the upside. So we're able to get in there. And again, you know, it's about having that risk. It's going to be very hard to see each time it's going to tag the trend line. In some cases, you're going to get down there, and it's just telling you, hey, this is starting to look good. Remember, we're looking at the stochastics. We're looking at the other indicators, candlesticks in some cases. So there's a lot of things that we add up here, and maybe even shorter time frames. The 60-minute rotation probably set up properly. We might even have a divergence. So there's a lot of other things, but this is just a bird's eye view of just finding your area of trade to trade, and then you could break it down on, you know, in the smaller time frame. But just remember one word of caution. You know, even though these setups are great and they're excellent opportunities, usually great, you know, great reactionary zones in the market, there will be times where you might be news coming out. There's always the what ifs out there. You get hit in a bad stock with a downgrade, or there's, you know, something happens. You have to always remember. And that was happening in Harley Davidson, which was, looked like at one point a great setup on the lower trend line. We moved up when we started to move back down, and I was like, all right, we got this thing in our eyes. We come down to that trend line. What happened was earnings came out, and earnings came out and gapped it down, and it gapped right around that level. It actually hit the stop in that. It wasn't in this stock. I don't think too many people were in it, but you know, it did trigger. Because it did pull down to its buy zone and hit the stop that same day. It was, you know, it was a news event, but then it started making it way back up, and you can see it's just chopping out. So whenever news comes out, you have to really, you know, consider that as a, you know, dangerous zone to trade any type of position into. So, but that's another underlying trend line again. And I'll just finish up talking about the Fastenal, which is a trade we're still in. And again, I just want to really point out the importance of understanding the lower trend line area. And when there's a channel within a channel, the 2 trend lines meeting called X marks the spot. And you can actually, we're right down in that zone. You know, you have to really give yourself some time. And there's also what we call a Coil Stochastic setup right underneath this channel. So this typically means that we're going to get a break higher, and this is going to break out of this channel. So let's just click on that. And you can see the X marks the spot. We kind of popped up here, retraced back down, chopped around, and then started moving back up. We didn't get a reaction in the stochastics because stochastics are not, they don't carry that after hours on this platform. So I'm not able to get my stochastic reading after the alerts have been triggered. But either way, what we did, we rotated back up here. We're going to take a look at the other chart here. It'll be easier. Here we go. It was basically that downward channel in that coil. So we popped out of it. Right here. Popped out of it. Then retraced all the way back, and we call this a stochastic, rotation. It's a channel breakout 180 rotation. It comes back halfway or all the way back. And instead of making that full, rotation, we make a half rotation. And we just bounced off of that, all right? We bounced off of that. We got a bounce. It pulled back. It chopped around. It's starting to climb back up. We start to identify a rising channel, but it's taking its time. And it's kind of extended up here in the daily. It's not giving us any good signals. A 60-minute time frame. We did pull back to that underlying trend line. That's a good spot right there. You can see a real clean pivot area here with a reversal candle. I'd like when that happens. And then we could follow that. We touch this pretty decent candle here, and we're right back here at this level. Do we hold this? Do we push a little bit higher, or is there a little fake out, breakout? I think either way we're moving higher on this. It's just that, you know, we'll have its little shakeouts here and there. You know, but I do expect this to break back up to the upside. The 60-minute is set up for early next week, but that was another one we tackled on these lower trend lines a lot. Now we have that rise in trend line. Same concept. It's just that you're not really buying into as much weakness as you are here. These could be weakness buying into it, but just two different types. The lower trend line, the rise in trend line, but you're both buying into weakness. All right, I think that's it on that video. Just want to tell you what we're trading these days. Things are working out really good. Can't wait till next week. Happy Memorial Day. And if you actually, I just did a new video for channels. It's a beginner video for channels. It's part of the series I have. So look for that also on YouTube. That should be one of the latest videos out.